We're here with Eric Kristen from the Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We're so happy to have you. Tell the group a little bit about your coalition and why you're here, and we'll go into some of the things that are happening here in Arizona.
Thanks, Dave. Well, thank you for having us here. It was a pleasure to come into a state and actually hear from a majority in the Senate and Assembly committees that we spoke to in support of fair and open competition. The Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction does just that. We are advocates for fair and open competition in the construction industry, and specifically fighting what are known as project labor agreements. PLAs, as you know, and as your bills deal with, ban either implicitly or sometimes even explicitly non-union workers from being able to work on a project as non-union workers. They can work on a project, they just have to become, for all intents and purposes, union members. Our men and women that belong to the organization oppose that. They believe that you should not be forced using the coercive power of government to join an organization you otherwise do not want to. And we have been in existence for 14 years, California statewide organization made up of union and non-union contractors that simply support freedom in the industry. And PLAs are antithetical to that, so we fight PLAs. And it was a joy to be here in a state where you actually are banning these things at the legislative level. In California, we couldn't do that in a million years. So
what did you think about your experience here? Would you give me a
Again, sitting in front of a group of elected officials, including Democrats today, who voted, 2 Democrats voted for this in a bipartisan manner, you know, just talking about how this is just common sense reform that needs to be codified into your law. And again, sadly in California, that would never happen at our state assembly or Senate level, but at the local level, we are doing what you did here today, which is the people get a chance to vote on this at the city, county levels. They're voting against PLAs overwhelmingly. Councils are voting against them. So the assembly doesn't get it like yours does. The legislature doesn't get it like yours does, but the local people at the local level get it. So we're doing at the local level what you've done at the state level.
Well, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because we were accused by union organizations of playing union boogeyman politics, is the way it was referred to with us. But there's a very real outcome of political jurisdictions being saturated with union representatives, thus moving that project labor agreement mandate down to construction companies.
Correct.
And that's basically what you do in California, right? Well, explain that, because it's important for the folks to know this isn't boogeyman.
This isn't theoretical.
This isn't theoretical.
Real.
This is real.
Right.
Explain that.
Yes, we fought over 400 in California in 17 years. I mean, it's almost inconceivable to most other states because we are such a large construction market, $700 billion a year construction market. It is, I'm sorry, I said billion, $1 million a year construction market. It's massive. And what we do is we have seen an increase of these over the years because the unions use them as a market capture tool. Well, we can't compete in a lot of cases, so we're going to force people to join the union. And they are not theory, they are real, and they hold real world implications for the taxpayers who have to pay 20% more per square foot on a project that's built with a PLA. So every school that you build under a PLA, whereas you could have gotten 4 schools built, you're only getting 3 because of the reduction in the value of the dollar. So in Arizona, you are now nipping this in the bud, if you will, early on because of a couple of experiences you've had, but we have had to suffer through them for 17 years. And while we've had many victories, we've also had many defeats. And we are really learning how to deal with these because we have a legislature that will never ban them. So we have to deal with it at a local level. So the unions say we're making them as a boogeyman. In reality, we have union and non-union contractors coming together who view these as a very, very, you know, really threat to their way of life. And it's not just theoretical. That's why the LA Times has written about it recently, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, Fox News. They're all covering this because it's real. It's not just a made-up boogeyman, as the unions like to say.
Walk us through Gaylord and what happened. And I found that to be a pretty intriguing story.
It is intriguing. There was a $1 billion resort that was looking to be built on one of the few remaining acres of coastal stretch that was still able to be developed in California, down in the city of Chula Vista, which is just south of San Diego. Unions went to the developer and the owner and said, build it union only, or we will hold this project up until you do so, using all the environmental leverage that they had. And Gaylord said, we cannot possibly make this pencil out if we build it union only. 90% of the construction workforce in San Diego is non-union, so it just doesn't make sense. Where are we going to get the workforce? But the unions didn't give. And finally, after 3 years of fighting it, Gaylord walked away. And they said, we are going to build something, but we'll build it in Arizona. And then the economy tanked, and that project's on hold. But when the economy comes back and they're building here in Arizona, they won't be building in Chula Vista because the unions have essentially scared that business away. So it's a big deal. That would have been 2,000 jobs, $1 billion build out, and it would have already been done now because this is something that they wanted to start it back in 2005. So it would have survived the economic, it would have been in place before the economic downturn. And instead you drive down to Chula Vista and it's an ugly, dilapidated, just ugly stretch of old warehouse, stretch of land there, and it's too bad. You mentioned the LA Times article, and just to bridge this is sort of how AGC got involved in this, where the unions were taking the line siting committee of the Arizona Corporation Commission, basically requiring applicants to come in and have to meet with the unions before they'd go to the full commission for approval. Something similar to that happened per the LA Times. Walk through that one too, so the folks know that it isn't just non-union versus union, because that was an interesting twist there that the LA Times articulated in that article. The LA Times gave voice to an argument that's going on now and a real battle that's being waged when it comes to the permitting process for California power plants, all of which have to go through the California Energy Commission to be approved. That bottleneck provides the unions with an opportunity to mandate that all these plants be built with PLAs, or else they'll just hold up the process at the CEC using, they'll just document dump and dump, 5 feet of documents on these poor developers who are basically left asking themselves, do we hold up our project for 2 years answering all these questions, or we just agree to a PLA and get it built? Well, the LA Times, after a lot of insistence from us and others, said, you need to write stories on this extortion that's going on. We call it green mail instead of blackmail, green mail, cute. But it really is. And the LA Times, what it did in a nutshell was it talked about, it wasn't our complaints, even though we do oppose what the unions are trying to do. It talks about the internecine warfare that's going on between the two union groups. The laborers, the operating engineers, and the carpenters are all opposed to what the unions are trying to do because they're saying it's holding up projects. This is work we could have. It may not be union only, but at least it will be work that we could have. You're holding it up. It's wrong to use the environmental review process for this. LA Times, I think it was just a damning report, which we're going to use far and wide, obviously. Sacramento Bee's written about the same thing. The New York Times talked about what it is we're doing. The Wall Street Journal has as well. People get this. And when you look at it and read it, you go, this is outrageous. How can they do this? And what you've done in Arizona is you've just taken away the leverage that they had at those various organizational levels. You've just taken that leverage away by just banning them, and people can't do it now. So now you're going to get plants built based on their merits, not based on some promise that's been made to a union special interest. And that's what the LA Times article talked about. Specifically, it was a San Bernardino solar plant, which they were trying to hold up on environmental grounds. A solar plant that they wanted to hold up on environmental grounds. You can't make this stuff up. It becomes almost comical. So we defeated it, actually, that particular plant. We stopped it was approved despite the union's objections. That's excellent. Yeah. That's good news. So talk about membership in your organization. Let's talk about how you survive by the contributions and so on to do the wonderful work that you do. Yeah, we don't want to compete with the ABCs and the AGCs and the independent electrical contractors associations out there. So we are just a strictly nonprofit. If you like what we're doing, you can write us a $50 check or write us a $50,000 check. We prefer more of the $50,000 checks, but whatever. All joking aside, we really rely on doing a good job and being rewarded for it. If we're doing our job, and we've done it for going on 13 years now, we will remain in business. We think having a due structure really puts us into competing with more established organizations, which are there really for a broad base of reasons. We're here for one reason only, to fight PLAs and to promote open competition. And so we have a niche. It's a rather arcane issue to most of the public. Obviously the industry gets it, and that's who supports us. Associations, contractors, individual workers have written checks, taxpayer groups, obviously maybe a chamber of commerce, builders exchanges. Primarily though, that real segment of the industry that gets what this is about. We don't get, something from Washington, D.C. coming in. This is a very specific issue to us in California, and to a lesser extent the rest of the states that are dealing with it. But 24 states now are pushing PLA bans, so everyone's getting this now.
If Arizona does this, we'll be the 7th state?
You will be the 7th state that's actually implemented it. Right now, you are currently in competition with 5 other states that are moving it through the process right now, and then another 12 are considering it. So it's catching on. People get it. You can't afford to have taxpayer dollars wasted in these economic times. Every dollar that goes to pay, for instance, in Riverside, they passed community college district passed a big bond. They put a PLA on it. The first thing they had to do was spend $1 million to go out and hire an administrator to oversee it. You just created a whole new level of bureaucracy. Something that would never have been required without the PLA. That's $1 million that could have built, a dorm or something else. So,
you have a website?
Yes, www.opencompca. OpenCompCA, as in Open Competition California.
We'll have it on the bottom.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll get it all printed out.
Visit it. It's a real clearinghouse of PLA-related information. We have a lot of good pictures. You'll see stuff that, the fights that we've been involved in, they are interesting. The unions are vociferous opponents of ours, the unions that push PLAs. And but it's a good website.
Well, just a big thank you for your time. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for testifying today.
That was fun.
In the House Committee and in the Senate, the House Committee yesterday and the Senate Committee today. We'll keep you abreast as to what's going on.
Please.
And hopefully you'll have a successful outcome to show on your website when we get this to Governor Brewer, who I'm pretty confident would be interested in making sure this comes to fruition.
Send it to us, and we'll definitely get it out to our database. That'll be great.
Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Dave.